Have you ever been at an event and wondered who hired that speaker who put the audience to sleep? Or been the speaker at an event who wished the stage had an escape hatch? Yeah, we're on a mission to end this. Welcome to the Doug Thompson podcast, where event planners and professional speakers come together to create amazing events. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, storyteller and professional speaker. Grab your beverage of choice, settle in, and let's get started. Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Antoinette Roze and her agency help 6- and 7-figure experts secure consistent, high-value speaking engagements, allowing them to focus on their zone of genius while achieving the impact, income certainty, and freedom lifestyle they desire. They deserve to, I would imagine, if they're at that level. Leveraging decades of industry wisdom, her agency provides a strategic, done-for-you booking system that ensures calendar predictability and world-class opportunities. She's also the host of the Speak Pact podcast. The bottom line is, from a client she had, working with Antoinette and her team transforms inconsistent gigs into a powerful, predictable engine for massive revenue growth, a freeing lifestyle, and expanded worldwide influence. Antoinette, welcome to the podcast.
What an introduction. Thank you, Doug. So thrilled to be here with you.
That was one of those, I should practice that instead of the purple people eater thing to get my, because there was a lot of words in there. It was sort of complicated.
Yep.
But it works. Antoinette, thanks again for coming on. And you're the first former or rehabbed event planner, or however you want to phrase that, but you did have a life. So give us a little bit of your backstory. How do we get to where you've had this fantastic agency?
Sure. Thank you so much, Doug. And love your podcast. Big fan. I'm very honored to be with you today. And we have very similar audiences, so this is going to be great fun. Starts way back. I won't bore you with the way back, but as a youngster, I was diagnosed with late stage 4 and was not expected to make it. So I was in and out of a children's hospital for about 2 years, 1 year straight, and then another in and out, because prior to that, I was in and out of foster homes. They caught it very late, and there was just nothing that they could do except for experiment on me. So a team, thankfully, a team of university doctors had petitioned me to go to this university hospital hundreds of miles away from home. And so those kids in that ward became my family during that time. The quote unquote lucky children, pretty soon I didn't feel like they were so lucky, and I didn't feel like I was so unlucky because of what I saw them go through that I didn't have to go through. Many of them didn't get to step out of that hospital and see the rest of their lives. And I remember thinking, even as a child, not understanding all the politics and all the things that go into it, I remember thinking, why weren't their parents told maybe there was something else they could try first before doing that? And so that instilled in me very young that I wanted solutions to be easy to find when people need them. And of course, this was pre-internet. And you would think that these days, if somebody wants information, they could quickly and easily find it, but it's still not so easy. You still don't know, am I guessing? Am I gambling on whether it's your well-being or your marriage or your profession, whatever it may be? Am I gambling, or am I really getting the right information? And I believe the most powerful way for people to really explore and decide that, yes, this is the way I want to go, is when boots on the ground speak. And I call those the hidden gems in this world, who have been out there doing the thing, figuring out the solutions, but they're in some corner of the world somewhere doing it. And maybe their community gets the privilege of that, but not the greater world. So very early on, I decided, I don't know how I was going to do it, but I wanted to make sure that voices got heard. Those hidden gem voices got heard. Went off to college, knew I didn't want to be a doctor, but I took business management and computer information systems, which was hilarious. Just to turn on the computer, you needed to know code, DOS, if anybody's even knows what that is anymore.
I do remember those days. Yeah.
And public relations and marketing. So I double majored. And basically, when I got out, I went into publishing. It was through an internship that I'd gotten. So I started off in the world of publishing, really for pretty neat niche, international niche magazine that was really my college after college. Right after that all kind of closed up, that moved me, funnily enough, that moved me from California to Texas, which my family was like, what the flip are you doing? There's no Italians in Texas. And back then there really, really wasn't. But I did fall in love with the slower pace of life from having grown up, been born and grown up in the LA area. Funnily enough, the magazine moved back to California. And I decided, no, I think I'm going to stick here. I was a young single mom at the time, and I could afford life without 5 jobs here. And it just had a neat quality of life. So I stayed, and I'm like, okay, now what next? And that's when I went into really the PR and marketing side of things. And that turned into me accidentally buying a house. Seriously, this is a whole funny another story. Accidentally buying a house, which was way too big for me and my son. So I turned it into a bed and breakfast. And as a side thing, I would hold these events at my home, bed and breakfast, and bring in speakers. And pretty soon, it was a 650, 700 square foot meeting room, standing room only. People were out on the deck in my kitchen, trying to peer in overheads. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should start renting a community center. Started renting a community center, grew out of that pretty quickly. And then I just launched right into renting out convention centers, did really, really well in the producing space for about 18 years. Loved it. It was amazing. I wouldn't trade that season for anything, but it beats the heck out of you. It's a beater upper. You work on one event for a year, and if you've got multiple events, it's a lot. So one thing though that I was noticing is I could only get speakers on as many stages as I could produce. And to me, that wasn't enough. I wanted to put speakers on more stages, get them more heard. And I had thousands of attendees at my events, but still to me, it just wasn't enough. So, I had been dealing obviously with speaker agents that whole 18 years, them on the other side of things, right? Them bringing their speakers to me. There was a lot I didn't like about the industry, but it was all I knew. So when I made the big shift, I went into the typical format of what an agency is. If you're lucky, they'll give you the time of day. They'll sit you on their shelf, and if you're super lucky, they'll throw you a bone every now and then. And for that, you pay them 25%. This kind of the average. What I didn't love about it is I was all about the emerging voices. So while Doug Thompson might be the best person for that stage, Amy Zoe, whatever her name is, might be making $10,000 more a talk. So Doug Thompson sits while she goes and gets those engagements. And that was happening when I was a producer. I knew who their speakers were. I knew who I wanted, but they kept pushing other people on me because they just happened to be higher paid speakers. Number one. And number two, speakers need to be on stages speaking. And there's no one agency that's going to make sure that you're pitched enough times to know that you've got those 3, 4, 5 engagements like clockwork on and so I was like, what's the solution? What's the solution? And then just through trying it every which way, finally landed on a model that really works. And I guess the point of that story is if you have a story and you have a solution, then you have a voice and you need to get it out there. It's not a nice have. It's a mandate. It's a necessary. So get it out there, but don't put all your eggs in some other person's basket. You really have to put some elbow grease in there as well. And there's the rub, because the speaker needs to be the speaker. They don't need to be the one, making those 25, 50 calls a day, sending out the emails. But at the same time, the agency has the know-how, right? So how do you piece all that together? So I think the best of all worlds is to have somebody on your team. And so any speaker that we bring into the agency, one of our requirements is that you have an assistant. And if you don't, you allow me to help you get an assistant, because really, if you're serious about a serious business, there's always going to be a team involved. And these days, there's really no reason not to have someone. You can even hire internationally for this style of work, because it's just all about the numbers. Not about automations. To me, as a speaker, if you're out there automating for your gigs, that's like to me, that's like going on a date with someone who's like, okay, well, we got to hurry up and get this date done because I've got 5 more lined up to see who might actually like me.
Speed
And you
dating.
can't really build a relationship on automations. Once you once you build the relationship and they've opted into your newsletter, your nurture, whatever, then the automations are fine. But I see a lot of speakers getting it backwards. They're like, I'm just going to blast the heck out of all these organizations and corporations. And yeah, that's like, yeah, sitting with a date
Yeah.
with a paper bag on their head. Right. It's just never going to create those kinds of relationships
Right.
that you need in this industry. And really what this industry is all about is relationships before, during, and after every talk you make.
You did it's such a powerful story that I mean, there's so many different areas I'd like to comment on, but that's for another one. Just simply your journey. The house story you told about remind me of the Bible story where these four friends brought a friend of theirs that was lame and put it through a hole in the roof because they were all
Yes.
outside. That's like my favorite story from that. I actually got to read that at church the other day.
I love it.
So I was like, this is great. But that's what it showed you. You've got just the passion of those four friends, which sounds like your agency is a lot like that. And trying to get that message out and break it down. But it does help coming from, I think, from the other side. You understand, as I mentioned before we got on the air, for me, it's a little bit like when I started to date. I didn't understand. I still don't understand. I've had 2 daughters and a wife, been married 40 some odd years. I still don't understand women. But, it helps. It helps if you have a little understand what the needs and stuff are and what's going on. So you shared a great bunch of information from our side because I do see a lot of we'll create these systems and automate. And there's, I'm in technology, so there's a place for automation, but it does seem to lack that personal touch, and it does come across as a bit ingenuous at times when you come across to do that. And I think that's what you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. It is disingenuous and it is impersonal, and there's no way AI is ever going to replace the personal touch. So you can spot it a mile away. It's getting pretty good, like really good. Even somebody can be talking and it's actually AI, and you
Hmm.
almost have to look really closely. But at the end of the day, the human touch is what's needed. And you really only need, this is the thing, you really only need like 10 solid industry relationships.
Hmm.
And then you can relax a little bit. I think you always need that forward movement and,
Yeah.
never stop moving forward. But once you get those core relationships, they beget other relationships.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work on the front end, but then there's this rhythm and momentum building that happens.
Yeah. Somewhat like moving to a new neighborhood, you got to make new friends. But I use the analogy quite often is every job that I've gotten has been started from a relationship with somebody else. And I got to jump to the head of the line in a lot of the cases. My first
Mhm.
job out of college was impressed my college professor enough that this guy was starting a company and wanted to hire somebody, and I happened to be around. And then as I moved on, it was all through a relationship and stuff that I had. They knew who I was and they were my advocate. And I went, hey, you need to do this. And so I know how that relationship and how they can open doors, and having other people watch out for you. You, Doug would be perfect for this. And I know Zoe, I've been hunting for her for weeks, but, yeah, I was wondering who that anyway, but it's having that relationship so that they can be your advocate. Cause then they have people that trust them that can make things. And we're very much on the same mission of getting people's voice out there by getting a story out. And that's why I'm on a storytelling mission, is because I find a lot of people, especially in technology, we're never trained and don't have that capability to truly share a story that is relevant to multiple audiences.
Mhm.
Why this technology is good or what have you. And that's sort of what I'm on a mission for. And, very similar type thing, get that voice out there.
Well, I think that was one of the things that brought us together initially, is that blend of your focus, technology and storytelling almost seems like an oxymoron, right? But it's so powerful, especially the techier or more scientific or more data driven something gets. People need to be able to see where it relates. Boy, if my math teacher would have known that, I would have probably been really good at math if I could have seen how is this relevant in my life? What's life going to look like once we master? or bring
Yeah.
this technology in. So yes, that's one of the things that is very, very unique about you and your show and your journey is that you mix two what seems opposite
Yeah.
expertise, right? But they actually, one serves the other very, very well.
It's interesting because when I got the gig at Microsoft before I started that, there was a guy that came in and they were doing this road show for a product that came up. And they brought in a bunch of trainers, right? Certified trainers, which I was a trainer. And that's a little different. I mean, that's not quite speaking and stuff because it's a very specific content set that you got to deliver on. But he was a former Broadway actor. He was in Hair, and he was, I mean, he was flamboyant. You look in the dictionary, it's got his picture next to it. I mean, he was just out there, and it's not usually something, as you said, that you see a very artistic, very capable person like that really gets technology that deeply. And maybe he didn't get that deeply, but he could tell a story of why it was important and got into the audience's mind. And I took that forever. I said that was something that made an impression on me years ago, is that is a unique skill that is just, you need that. You need somebody to explain that to you, like your 5-year-old, or what's the value to me. And much like you do, here's the value that Doug would bring to the stage to your audience and stuff. So you're painting that story as well. So, I mean, it's just powerful. And I sort of came by it unconsciously. I didn't realize that's what I did until somebody pointed it out to me. Cause I enjoyed stories. I was a big reader. I found out that explaining things in a language that people understood would worked a lot better than trying to get down to the ones and zeros of things, so
Well,
it's a powerful
stories,
tool.
yeah, absolutely. Stories are what keeps your core topic relevant. Stories are what keeps you from getting bored from your own talk, right? One of the things that speakers often ask me is, "Oh, should I have 5 keynotes? Should I have multiple different talks?" No. In my book, you have one core brand, you have one core keynote. You are the go-to expert in AB, right?
Mhm.
That's that you. So for you, Doug Thompson, you are the go-to expert in storytelling. But then with this extra expertise of being able to communicate very complex things with a story, right? So as people refer you, I can see why you would be referred. As people refer you, it's easy for them to do that because it's very clear what you're
Mhm.
about. If you've got 5 or 6 different talks, I remember really liking Doug a lot, but I don't remember what. Well, I know this other guy really specializes in that, right? And so you want to be the specialist for sure, but you also want to stay relevant and interesting. And how you do that always is through stories. It'll feel like an entirely different talk every single time, but that core still comes through. So we encourage our speakers to keep a story bank. You can do it on Trello. Trello's free. You can just have a spreadsheet, however you like to keep notes in your phone. But something silly happens throughout the day, something uncommon or something that just really struck you, and just throw it in there. Just some trigger words. You don't have to say
Yeah.
the whole story, but that becomes something you can draw from, whether you're writing a book, an article, you're on somebody's podcast, or you're getting on a stage. That is something you can draw from to relate to the audience, which hopefully you've done some research on, that you're speaking with. You just have this beautiful, well deposited bank
Mhm.
full of stories you can draw from that are from your own life. And if you're doing this on an ongoing basis, then these are recent relevant stories as well. How do you do that, Doug? How do you keep
Yeah. Well,
track?
thanks for asking. You set me up for thanks for asking. Yeah, so I call this thinking in stories. And so when I look around and find different things, how can I make a story out of that? Right? Is there something in life that I could use? And I find that there's a lot of things just day to day people miss on how to sort of connect the dots. And I make a joke of I really only have 5 stories, but I have like 50 characters and all these different things that will change what that story is. It's a basic structure. Here's the point, as you mentioned. But I'm constantly looking and listening. So that's another thing that I found is when I'm in tech sales, is where I got all of this, is I listen to what the audience is telling me, right? And I call this is my first step in this 8 steps to telling a great story, is where does you start where your audience lives? You need to use words that they use. You need to describe their daily existence. You need to sort of understand the problems that they have that they would like to do better, and then frame what you're trying to do. Because if you meet them there and you start using that language, they're more than likely to sort of come across that chasm that exists. Do I trust this guy or woman? Do I trust this person that they understand who I am so that I can then sort of buy into what they're telling about? And that's very fundamental. A lot of people miss is I use the same story. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. And it's just, like I learned this in education, even though some of the technical problems that they have are exactly the same thing that a Fortune 100 company would have. But if I use that Fortune 100 language, they don't understand. So I have to use language, like student outcome, and here's what the classroom time, and all these other things that I think, and they're there. I understand their life, and I do. I mean, I do a lot of research on that stuff, and that's where actually AI helps a little bit, doing some background stuff for you. But yeah, it's very much about that. You got to know who your audience is for that particular talk, and I always like to leave a little space in my opening to do something relevant to the location or something where I'm at that day. Because you have like 2 minutes they're going to check their phone all the time, or they're going to listen to you. And if you can sort of hook them into that, again, I'm starting where you're at, something relevant of the day to them or something like that, then okay, then I've got their buy-in. And again, these are things I've learned from other people, but found that they work very well.
Yeah, spot on. So it's the core of the information you're bringing, it stays the same, but the relevance goes right to their hearts, to the hearts of the people that are in the audience. And a story or a joke may have landed for some other audience, like you said, but it's going to be totally lost on this completely different audience that you're in front of. So that's where it all happens.
Yeah, and I've had that chicken watching the television look when I tell a joke sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, again, we're so much on the same vibe here from the things that we've done, and again, not from the past experience. I can't imagine. I look at children. My wife had lymphoma, and she was stage 3 at the time. And she's overcome that, and she's been in remission for a long time. They were going to do they were going to do sort of a case study, because she's been in. She had one minor relapse that came back, but it's a slow growing one she has. It's not something where you wake up one day and, like you said, you're at stage 4. But you're a fighter, and it's just, I can't, but I have found that in watching my 5-year-old granddaughter grow up, it's just like they have a resilience that they haven't learned, that we haven't taught them all the bad things that adults teach them.
Right.
And they tend to adapt better at that.
I'm sure my youth had a lot to do with my healing, for sure. And the fact that every time the nurse kept bringing in painkillers, I just instinctively knew, I don't know how, but I would stick them in my mouth, but then spit them out later.
Spit them out. Yeah. And it's amazing the things that we find out with medicine, even with like I said, with the internet today, you have to check multiple sources. You can't just trust one thing to find out what is true, right? And you have to, but it's always been that way. We should always determine what truth is based off information that's out there. I don't want to let somebody else to think for me. And in my talks, I don't really try to share my point of view as much as I want to get them to think about a specific thing with new information that they have. And that's really the goal that I have to come when I did my TED talk. It's funny when I do a TED talk, I played a completely different video track in my head than what it turned out to be. And I wasn't feeling very good about it, because it was different than what I had. And when, afterwards, I'm, talking to the crowd, and this gentleman comes up, and he's got this notebook with like 5 pages of notes, and one of the slides that I had, and he was asking me follow-up questions. I said, okay, then I've reached one person, which is always my goal, to help one person think differently, because you don't know what ripple that'll take. But I want them to sort of challenge. I want to have fun. We're going to have fun, but I also want to challenge your way of thinking, get them to try to think a little bit differently about things and come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, you brought up a scenario that happened a few months ago. I was at a conference, and funnily enough, I used to be all about well-being and natural wellness, and I've expanded the stakes of my tent quite a bit since then. But I was at an integrative cancer conference in Austin. And a lot of the speakers who had been on my stages years before were there. It was like this reunion of sorts. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. But what was interesting to me was my husband's 11 years older than me. He's having some teeth issues. And so I have been researching integrative dentists, right? Just trying to figure out which way to go. Do we go to Mexico? Do we stay in the States? Like, what do we do? And I am a good researcher. But still, once upon a time, we had not enough information, right? You had to
Mhm.
go to the
Right.
library and there was a microfiche, right? You had to,
Yeah.
and now you have too much information. Like, how do you know what's right, what's not? And that's where the power of voice comes in, the power of a speaker comes in. Because, of course, when I saw on the agenda, there was an integrative dentist that was going to be talking. From New York. So I was all about that, right? So I made sure my schedule was such that I could go and hear him. And he realized I was an agent. He was really interested in having me represent him. And afterwards, I had given him my phone number. So he texted me and said, okay, how'd I do? What would you change? All of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I'll actually share some of those tips here in a moment. But what my point is here is, had he not taken time to fly to Austin, Texas from New York, get on a stage that, by the way, he wasn't paid to get onto, and to leave his practice cost him a
Mhm.
good bit of change, for a day to 2 days when you have to do that. But that room was basically standing room only. And one client he gets out of there, probably in that client's lifetime, is worth anywhere from 30 to maybe even $100,000, right? Just depending on what they need. So that was probably a 7-figure room for him. But what was striking to me is I had done all of this research and he basically handed it to me on a platter.
Mhm.
And I trusted him and I was able to hear his case studies and even meet some of the people that he had treated. And so I'm all about him now. Right. And
Yeah.
so that's really the power of voice and the power of speaking.
Yeah.
And do you want me to do you want me to share with you my,
Let me, but yeah,
yeah,
I want
go
you to share
somewhere.
one thing. I want to sort of wrap around that, and it sort of ties back earlier in the conversation. We talk about all this information that I have. A good speaker, I think, acts as a curator of all that information, if I want to use that word correctly, and sort of distills it down again towards the audience and stuff that they have that. And then, it's up to the audience. So it clarifies it a little bit too, from a curation standpoint. Hey, I'm going to get rid of some of the noise here. There's a lot of this other stuff that's on here, and from a medical training perspective, much like a technical training, there's a lot of words in here that I have to look up every third word, right? It's hard for me to make context while I'm constantly doing that. And a good speaker, I think, brings that home and distills it down to very manageable story that I can remember, among other things, and then I can sort of make my own decisions from there. Okay. Well, let's hear the rest of what you had there. We'll drink some coffee.
Tea. Cheers. Salud. I love what you said. Yes. So interesting enough, okay, he had standing room only. He was pouring the whole pot of pasta over everybody's head. So very related to what you just shared.
Mhm.
Too much. Now everybody was riveted because dental is a big issue, right?
Right.
And people with certain sensitivities don't want metal in their mouth. There's just a lot to it. The MC had to basically pull him off the stage. They had to ask him about 5 times to wrap it up because he was going so long, and he was going
Yeah.
so long because he had incredibly interesting information, but it was too much for a 45-minute talk. What would have been way more powerful for him? Now, first of all, he was fun. We could have all stayed there 2 more hours listening to him. Like, he was an incredible speaker, but he was kind of harming himself without realizing it.
Right.
He had 45 minutes, and please, always, everyone out there, stay within the parameters. Because from the producer side, I know how difficult it gets if one speaker runs over, then the next
Yeah.
speaker. It gets really messy. So for that law of reciprocity and that just feel goodness, stay within your time. And with this particular doctor, how he could have served himself better, and I think this is going to be really valuable to your audience, is during your talk, you're giving the possibilities. You're not really giving the answers if you only have 45 minutes, right? He would have been much better served is if you would have given the possibilities and said, hey, for his call to action, and everybody should have a call to action. For everybody who's here, if you click on this QR code, you are registered to meet with me for 45 minutes in a group setting. And I'm going to go deeper on all of
Mhm.
this remotely. I normally charge, for a consultation that is very expensive,
Yeah.
$3,000, whatever.
It was New York.
But for this room here, I want to be able to go deeper. I want to put more into you. So click on this, sign up for the workshop, and come on. If you would have done that, then he has them on his territory. He does the workshop, and then he creates appointments. that would have been an easy step right into creating a consultation appointment, right? I think that he would have converted 80% of that room if he would have done that. Otherwise, what happens is people are like, oh my gosh, I love that guy. I want to make an appointment with him one day.
Mhm.
And probably most of them haven't yet. There's a big conference, other people to see, other appointments to make. And, it's just the way it happens. So I guess the takeaway here is don't pour the whole pot of pasta on people's heads because they can't digest it in one sitting, number one. And you can't do it justice usually in the span of a talk. Even if you have a workshop, you need to be careful. Give them a bowl of nourishment, let them digest it, let them feel the nourishment that you give them, and they will be so open to responding to that call to action you give. Whether it's midway through or the end, they'll be open because they want that next bowl of nourishment instead of being like, that was so good. It was just too much, right? With their hands up and pushing you away. Like I'd have to do with my grandmother and my grandfather's amazing ravioli. It's great, but I can't eat another mountain of it. You want to leave them wanting more, not let me just go and try to digest this and then I'll come back.
That's especially for technical topics. That's very good. Now I'm hungry. Does gelato come with that? Can I get some gelato with that?
Gelato. We have some really good gelato out here.
Be great. Well, Antoinette, thanks for spreading your wisdom around, your story. I had such a great time, and I've learned, again, some more techniques and stuff to take forward in life. Where can people get a hold of you? And we'll put them in the show notes too, but here's a few minutes for your own.
Great. Thank you, Doug. So speakerbooker.com is a good place to kind of see the different ways to get a hold of me. Speakerbooker.com. And then I'm a fellow top 10 ranking, top 10% ranking podcast. And much like you, I love my audience. And so we pour in a lot every single week. So that's Speak Pact. Pact is in our universal pact to create the biggest impact that we can in this world with the power of our voice. So speakpact.com. So speakerbooker.com or speakpact.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Antoinette Roze with a Z, Antoinette Roze with a Z, but I know that's a hard name. It's not even spelled like the regular Antoinette. So find me at SpeakPact.
That's great, and like I said, that is an older name. So isn't it an Italian name?
It is Italian.
Okay, yeah, it makes a lot more sense now to have that as well. Antoinette, it was such a great chat here. Thanks a lot, and I'm going to be a guest on your podcast coming up here in the future too. So I look forward to that discussion
you
as well.
Are.
We'll have some gelato at that time.
Right, Doug. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Doug Thompson Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. And share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. This really helps spread the message. Visit thedougthompson.com to join our growing community. Until next time, keep connecting, keep speaking, and keep making a difference.